Thank you for joining me. You're with Reverend Dr. Jason W. Morrison. I don't practice as a preacher anymore, but I got a lot of information I can share with people to help them out. Look, I don't recommend dating sites. I'm sure there's a lot of genuine people on there, but if you want to hop into a snake pit, you go right ahead. Okay, that's what it is. That's how it works. A lot of these people, 99.9%, are people that don't know what responsibility is or resolve after you get past the superficial honeymoon stage. You will find all sorts of horrors and hell will come jumping out at you. People know the small talk, they know how to navigate the initial stages of a relationship, but as the relationship wears on, it's hard to maintain a camouflage. It's hard for a chameleon to maintain a false facade. Now, I remember a documentary on one of the channels, that might have been the Discovery Channel, and there was a man who was a snake expert, and he used to sit in with all the snakes, and for some strange reason, some miracle reason, he never got bitten. One day at his property, two girls, very attractive girls, who were traveling, who heard about him, went round to his property, and he decided, right, this is how it works, he decided, obviously because they were attractive and all the rest of it, that he'd put on a little show for them, right? Just straight off the cuff. This is what the dating sites are like. You're meeting these people and they can put on a show for you. Oh, don't worry about that. They'll do it. They'll try and wrangle some way of getting their fangs into you. So he puts on this show for them, and lo and behold, what do you think happened? Boom! He got bitten by one of the snakes, and he actually died in front of these two girls. He carked it. And so this is what can happen to you. It's no good you going into an area of relationship, say you're a widow, you've come out of a decent relationship, or just a normal person that's genuinely tried to navigate a relationship with all your senses and with all your attributes, and the person that you've been with just hasn't had the character to maintain a healthy situation where everybody's flourishing. In other words, their self-destructive ways will come out. It's only a matter of time. It's hard to recognize these people. It's almost impossible. And there's some elements, I should say, to how this works. You've got two different people from two different tribes and two different worlds, and that brings an element of excitement with it. There's no problem with that. That's going to bring an element of excitement. Then, right, the chemistries, people's chemistries have a way of, when they're mixed together, creating different characteristic outcomes in people, right? You've got to understand this. This is the part of a relationship that's not predictable. The characteristic outcome that's going to come out of the blending of the people in spirit, soul, and body. Now, the lust aspect of this will usually bring a positive result, okay? Most people are good at sex. They know how to navigate the body and consequently bring about an element of satisfaction and satiableness, okay? That part is usually what most people run their relationship on. And if they can keep you at that level, right, they will not have to expose any inconsistencies in their character or any negative attributes that they have been unable to fix. And this is where the rubber hits the road. At some point, and this is where time gets lost, at some point, those negative attributes, you can call them narcissistic, you can call them whatever clinical name you want. I just call them evil because I'm an ex-preacher. I know how evil works and its elements and all the rest of it. That's why you need discernment, the classic skillful spiritual art of discernment, to watch what's going on relative to not just what they're saying, but what they're doing, or what they're doing and what they're saying. It works both ways. But the chemical combined spiritual and soul and body fusion will produce an unpredictable outcome. You can't predict how that's going to work because everybody's different. Okay, you can predict how the sex part of it's going to work if they're happy with that. A lot of these people use that as a way of holding somebody in a holding pattern, like a plane that's ready to land. That's how these people do a lot of it. But the longer the relationship goes on, the more you are going to realize about this person. Now, nobody sets out in a relationship to bring bad. I don't think. There are people that have wrong motives, and if you've been caught with one of those, I really feel sorry for you, and I hope you're getting through that okay. But most people really don't intentionally to set out to do somebody else harm. That's not the usual way in which people go about things. Unfortunately, not everything works out, and that doesn't necessarily mean that person's bad. It just didn't work out the way in which you would have liked. But there are people in our communities that do have agendas, that are motivated by money, ego, sex, and being puffed up. If somebody, say for instance, meets somebody else above their sexual marketplace value, then that's going to puff their ego up. They're going to think that they got some attributes that are going to enable them when they move on to find somebody else. May not be better, but it builds their ego, their personal self-esteem, because a lot of these people just haven't got self-esteem. Life's knocked the shit out of them, and they'll go about trying to build their self-esteem however they can, and usually they do this by way of the people in which they meet. So there is something that's missing in a lot of the teachings today, and that's the fusion, the outcome of the fusion of the two people. Okay, sex has got a tremendous way of blinding people. And if you meet somebody, and there's nothing wrong with sex, please don't get me wrong, and that's not what I'm saying. But there are outcomes from that will accelerate who that person is if you can see through the fog of the intimacy. Some people just aren't going to build a relationship with you. You're a supply for them that they like, that's convenient for them, and you'll find when things start to go awry and you challenge things a little bit to try and get some order, you'll start to see why most of these people have ended up on their own. They weren't going to give order. They didn't want to have order. They didn't want to build into something that was going to take an effort outside their core self. They've tippy-toed around just seeing what they can get while remaining in an element of life that is just not, or would be received as acceptable in the normal scheme of things. There's an innate element of their life where they've chosen to remain degenerate, as it were, or micro-incrementally dark triad-sided. They've just allowed these characteristics to stay in them because they feel that the sensations from this is worth it more than the effort that's required to sustain the relationship. And so then you're trying to navigate somebody that wants you in their life, but they're not prepared to build anything with you to have a good life. They don't want to do that. And that's really sad, because many times I've had relationships where all the potential's been there for everyone to be happy and to flourish, but for some strange reason, well, for a predictable reason, some people just don't want to build. They just want a convenience. They just want to use you to fulfill their lusts. Now, they might tell you they love you, and they might tell you all these types of things, but if it's not lining up with their actions, then you really have to come to your senses and say, this ain't working out for me. And you get tired of chastising these people and trying to help them to come into a place where it's mentally fit and soothing for you. See, once you're in a relationship and it's not soothing, and it's not soothing in a legitimate way, you're not being selfish or self-centered or unfair to that person, you need to really stop and take stock of what is actually going on. Some people are just lazy. They think that, well, they're only going to take a relationship to a certain level. And if that level is not where you think it needs to be, and then all of a sudden you're stuck in the middle of this, it's very hard, particularly depending on how much time you've invested, it's very hard for you to make these decisions if you want an outcome that's going to be positive and have duration. But some people just will not bring a resolve to things that are going to enable a soothing to your mind. That means they're out of touch with you. They're not in touch with you. They're not considering you. They're considering possibly somebody else that's in conflict with the relationship. There are triangulation situations 9 times out of 10 where you'll see the person's just not coming into alignment with where the health of the relationship should be at your expense, and they keep turning up, but emotionally they're not 100% where they should be in the relationship. And that's damaging. Once something starts to affect your mental health, once something starts to not contribute to the relationship, that's when you have to ask yourself, what is going on? What is actually happening? Hang on, guys. Sorry, just had somebody walking past the property. Don't know what they're checking out my truck with all the gear on it. So it's really important for you not to judge the person in a way in which you're trying to suit some means to meet your end. A relationship takes 2 people to go outside themselves without losing themselves. A lot of people give their heart to things too soon. A lot of people are never going to contribute in a duration way in a relationship, and if you find yourself with one of them, you need to identify it pretty quick. Some people have come out of abusive situations that they've been in for years and years, and possibly allowed themselves to be in there, where their relationship formation is never going to change, and they don't know how to resolve. They could have been spoilt and never had to resolve. They've always got away with what they thought was right, even if it wasn't, and they haven't developed in a way in which it's going to benefit anybody but themselves. But what I'm trying to say is, be aware, be alert. You can have a great relationship and be a good person for somebody else, as long as you're aware and you don't over-attach if they collapse, because it's very hard to tell what is actually you're getting yourself into with a lot of these people today. because society's undermined the old-fashioned values which actually worked. They did actually work. Things aren't going as good today with people as what they used to. There's all this mental health and stuff, and that's another story, and that so be it. But if you really get down to the basics of a relationship, I remember I was with a woman, I used to call her the nun. She wasn't a nun, but she may as well have been. And she had a little unit and she was paying it off, and I wanted to, make sure, without interfering in her business, that she stayed on track. And she didn't need me to do that, but I never put her in a situation where that was undermined or anything like that. And people don't notice this stuff when you're with them, that you actually got their best interest at heart. And they drive you around the bend, and then you tell them to go, and then they wonder what happened. This is common today. And I would advise you to keep your wits about you, be the best person that you can, offer the best of yourself, and stay transparent and be mindful. Don't turn up drugged out. Don't turn up stoned or pissed and all this sort of stuff and think that it's ever going to last or bring anything constructive. It's violating the other person's mentality and intelligence and commitment in health and wealth and mental health awareness and all that. Time's short, it goes quicker than you think, and you want to produce the best that you can, even if the other person's starting to collapse around you. Once you start getting senses of resentment and bitterness, you just need to get out, because then you're going dark, micro-incremental dark triad. And that can bring other forms of sabotaging behavior into the relationship. And you don't want to be a part of that. So this is Reverend Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist, New South Wales, Australia. Bye for now.